Well, hi, Lighthouse. With the year winding down and the holidays upon us, isn't it easy to mail it in, to be lazy? You know, you got your vacation penciled in on the calendar, you're counting down the days, the kids are on winter break. The Christmas decoration and cheer just make you feel a bit sluggish. Things are just slower, especially since we're quarantined. There's not much to do. And then temptation is to just go with the flow, cut some corners and coast. And this has relevance for many aspects of life: parental responsibilities, house chores, spiritual disciplines. But for today, one area I want us to consider is our work. In Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul describes how the gospel has power to transform. After immersing our hearts with the depth of our salvation in the first 3 chapters, Paul turns our attention to the nitty-gritty details of everyday life. As those united to Christ, we should walk in a manner worthy of the gospel, in a way that's different from the world. And in chapter 4, the apostle gets really practical, addressing how as Christians, our speech should change, our thoughts should change, our relationships should change, and in our brief time, how our work should change. Paul discusses this in verse 28, Ephesians 4:28. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest works with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. What I appreciate about the Bible is that it gives us the whole story. It doesn't provide half of the picture, it gives us a full one, a comprehensive perspective on how followers of Christ ought to approach our work. And to do that, Paul begins not where we expect him to. He first talks about stealing. The apostle calls out the thieves in the church, which, if you really think about it, is kind of wild. He knows that there are some in the congregation who struggle with stealing or actually do it. And Paul has a firm word. I like the NIV translation here, which reads, "He who has been stealing must steal no longer." So there's no wiggling out of this. For the Christian, stealing is clearly prohibited. Now, we tend to associate stealing with what we see on TV. We think of those who rob banks at gunpoint or people guilty of grand theft auto. And because we don't commit these crimes, we give ourselves a pass. But theft is more pervasive and insidious than we might think. We can steal a grade from our classmates when we cheat on the exam graded on a curve. We steal from our coworkers by taking credit for a project we didn't do. We steal from the government by inaccurately filing our taxes. We steal from fast food chains and clothing companies when we find a loophole to get and use the same coupon multiple times. And we can steal in our work. We do it when we waste the morning surfing the internet or fudging the hours on our time card. And since many of us are now working from home, there are a whole new set of opportunities we could possibly exploit. You know, no one's watching over your shoulder. Your boss can't suddenly drop by your cubicle. And so we can slack off, take a longer lunch, or just find other ways to fill our day. And sure, the most blatant thieves are those who steal before the public eye, but we can be guilty of the same crimes, just in private. But as Christians, we are called not only to be honest with our words, but with our work as well. Look at what stands on the other side of theft. Paul doesn't tell us to just stop stealing. He goes above and beyond that. Paul tells us to labor well, doing honest work. Now, isn't that fascinating? The apostle doesn't mention anything about the industry we work in, how much we make, or what benefits come along with the job. He cares less about what we do, but more about how honest work and why, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. I love how one scholar puts it. The thief is to become a philanthropist. Hands once committed to stealing are now hands committed to sharing. All the ingenuity and effort you used to put in cheating others or manipulating the system is to be reemployed to serve people. For some, it can mean you need to stop making excuses, find a job, and start working so that you can bless others. For others, you're already there. You're already working hard. The issue isn't your diligence, but your desire. Maybe you're working hard to advance self instead of to lend a hand. And Paul says for the Christian, work is no longer about me, but about you. And this is so clear, it's convicting. How often is this our mission statement or our outlook for how we go about our occupation or career? Church, let me ask, is this your motivation behind talking to a recruiter, asking for a promotion, or considering which work projects to take on? That one of the decisive factors you wrestle with is whether it will put you in a better position to serve others and be a witness for Christ. You ask for a pay raise because it enables you to support more missionaries, buy dinners for college kids, or prepare your family for adoption. You do your work excellently because it grants you credibility when you speak of integrity with your colleagues, when you tell them about the excellencies of Christ. And the charge in this verse isn't restricted to those who hold office in the corporate world. The principle can be extracted and then refashioned for many other areas. Parents, are we taking so much solo R&R time that we neglect our responsibility to deliberately and diligently raise our children in the knowledge of the Lord? Homeowners, have we hunkered down in our little kingdoms, hiding behind the castle wall of our houses instead of contemplating how we can do the hard work of building bridges with our neighbors so that we might proclaim the good news? Christian, have we turned from being so absorbed with what we can get, which is the spirit of stealing, and moved towards working, sharing, and serving, which is what giving requires? In light of the Christmas season, we have a shining model to imitate. Jesus Christ did not rest idle on his heavenly throne. No, he came down. He would do the honest and hard work of redeeming the lost, spending himself that he might have something to share. Salvation. And so we labor, not to earn his favor, but to play it forward. We work because our work can highlight his. And many of you are brilliant examples of this. I think of how you earn an honest wage so that you can supply more shoeboxes for Operation Christmas Child. I think of how you've used your artistic or culinary skills to create graphics for church events or feed those hungry for a meal. I think of how you've used your strength, resources, or expertise to come to the aid of someone sick. I think of how you've worked hard, given sacrificially so the ministry of the gospel can be sustained, the message of the gospel sent. Every time we labor to be generous with our gifts, we mimic the Father who's generous with his, the Son of God.